that down, let's move on to this, shall we? Well, we were just talking about Snow White. Opening weekend, they're projecting right now, it was going to be 50 to 60. They've now adjusted that to 40 to 50. We'll see if it even comes in at 40. But I finally had a chance to go and see Snow White yesterday. And I put up my out of the theater reaction, but I want to do a little bit of a fuller thing on it here today. You know, Disney's productions have not really been doing it for me lately. Had a couple of really good ones. I mean, obviously Deadpool and Wolverine was fabulous and all that kind of stuff, but I didn't like Mufasa. I didn't like Captain America, Brave New World. I liked Moana too.
Yeah, but you said the music wasn't up to
The
snuff.
music was completely non-memorable, and it wasn't nearly as good as... I mean, I still liked it. Like, I give Moana 2 a thumbs up. I enjoyed it, but I only saw it once.
Yeah.
And I didn't like it nearly as much as I was hoping that I would. And I've had my doubts about Snow White, even though I'm one of the only people in the world that liked the trailer. I feel like even people who were really enthusiastic about Snow White didn't like the trailers. I did, but that is what it is. So I went to go see it last night, or yesterday afternoon, I should say. Here's my overall thoughts. I didn't like it. I wish I did, but I didn't like it. But here's the funny thing. The two elements that most people were bitching about going into the movie was Rachel Zegler and the Seven Dwarfs. Right? A lot of people didn't like the look of the Seven Dwarfs, and for whatever contrived controversy people wanted to make up about Rachel Zegler because they didn't like things she said, which is fine. Here's the funny thing. As somebody who did not like this movie and gives this movie a thumbs down, those were the two best things in the movie. Okay, so as I always do, you know, when I really like a movie, I usually like to talk about the negatives first. When I don't like a movie, I like to talk about the positives first because I like to keep things balanced. But so let me talk for a second about the things that I thought were good, the upsides of this movie. Number one, dead straight. The first 10 minutes of this movie are fantastic. Like, I'm in the theater watching the first 10 minutes and I'm like, this is great. And it really is. There's this big opening musical number. It sets the context for Snow White and her parents and all that kind of stuff. And it's wonderful. It never is able to maintain that, though. Kind of like how Lightyear, like the first 30 minutes of Lightyear were great, and then it went right off a cliff after that. But for Snow White, the first 10 minutes are fabulous. Like, honestly, if you wanted to buy a ticket to see Snow White, and then you just went for the first 10 minutes and then left, I'd say, yeah, that's probably worth it. Because the first 10 minutes were the best 10-minute window of the entire film. Unfortunately, it only raised my expectations and then came crashing down.
Like the roller coaster.
Yeah. But again, give credit where it's due. The first 10 minutes were great. Rachel Zegler. Look, if you don't want to like her because of things of opinion she has and things she says, more power to you. That's fine. But I'm sorry. She's pretty wonderful in this movie. She really is. I'm not going to put her on a Cynthia Erivo level. But when it comes to straight up Hollywood, she's a top 3 best singer in the business. Like, this girl can belt. Now, we learned that, of course, in West Side Story.
Yeah.
I almost said West End Story.
Yeah.
The West End boy in West Side Story. We learned that in there. She was even a standout in that not so great Hunger Games movie she went on and did.
Snakes on a Plane or whatever it's called.
Snakes on a Plane. Listen, straight up, she's great in this movie. And if you want to bring your personal feelings about her and try to force that on and pretend like she wasn't great in this movie, you do you, but she was great in the movie. I got to give her all that. Her singing was dynamite. She completely embodied Snow White to me. She was great in the film. The other great thing, or at least good thing, that I was completely had my socks charmed off was the dwarves. And I know there's a lot of, there are even people out there who like this movie. Remember, the critics are basically split. The last I checked on Rotten Tomatoes, it had a 47%, which means, for those of you who don't know how Rotten Tomatoes works, that means 47% of the critics liked it and 53% don't. So it's almost completely evenly split, just about. And it's funny because even a number of the critics that I read that did like Snow White, I do not, but they did. They didn't like the dwarves. That was one of the weaknesses to them. So be it. To me, they were, I loved him. I really thought they were absolutely one of the strong points of the movie. I love Doc. I love Grumpy was my favorite. I really did enjoy them. Here's the funny thing, though. At the end of the day, they had nothing to do in the movie. Like in the third act of the film, like you see in the trailers, I'm not spoiling anything. And this is where we'll transition to the negatives. In the third act of the film, which you see in the trailers, at some point, Snow White ends up back in the kingdom and says, "We're taking the kingdom back for the people," right? All that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So like they're rallying. There's a scene where they're rallying everybody, and the dwarves are like, "Yeah, let's go." And you see the dwarves marching off to the kingdom. And then literally don't do anything. They literally don't do anything.
They went on a walk.
It ends because Snow White gives a nice speech. And the dwarves are standing there somewhere, but they literally don't do anything. Like, they sneak into the palace through this hidden cave, so you think, ooh, they're about to do something, but they literally do nothing.
That makes me feel like there was an editing choice where they cut. There was probably a lot more to that, and they cut it out.
Maybe, but I'll tell you what, look, because the film is relatively short. Like, it's an hour and 49 minutes or something like that. So it's a nice, perfect length movie, right? We want to take a second to thank a sponsor of today's episode, Indeed. Okay, so you just realized your business needed to hire somebody like yesterday. How can you find amazing candidates fast? Easy. Just use Indeed. When it comes to hiring, Indeed is all you need. Stop struggling to get your job post seen on other job sites. Indeed's Sponsored Jobs helps you stand out and hire fast. With Sponsored Jobs, your post jumps to the top of the page for the right candidates so you can reach the best talent faster. And it works. Indeed's data shows that sponsored jobs get 45% more application than non-sponsored jobs. The thing I'm impressed most with Indeed is how fast it makes hiring. When I was looking to hire somebody for the John Campea Show, the process felt slow and overwhelming. I hate it. I wish I had used Indeed. And you want to know how fast Indeed is? In just the minute that I've been talking to you, 23 hires were made on Indeed worldwide. So don't wait. Speed up your hiring now with Indeed. And for listeners of this show, you get a $75 sponsored job credit to get your jobs more visibility at Indeed.com/Campea. Just go to Indeed.com/Campea and support our show by saying you heard about Indeed here. That's Indeed.com/Campea. Terms and conditions apply. Hiring? Indeed is all you need. I like Mark Webb as a director very much. 500 Days of Summer, his first Amazing Spider, not so much the second one, but the first Amazing Spider-Man film, I think that's an underappreciated film. I really like him, but he made this was not his best day at the office. He made some really questionable decisions creatively going through that. And that one example of like the dwarves marching off and then utterly it was for nothing,
right,
is kind of symbolic of a lot of things that happen in there. I'll give you an example with things that just happen for no apparent reason and no explanation. There's a scene in the movie, and again, I'm not going to give anything away because I'm not going to give you the context. There's a scene in the movie where these forest bandits and the dwarves are kind of having this argument over the table, and Snow White says, what do you think, first of all, what do you think is the most cookie cutter, stereotypical thing for a character to say right there? Stop, this is exactly what the queen wants. She wants us arguing amongst ourselves, which is straight up right there, just horrible writing. But it's like, to the best of my knowledge in this movie, the queen doesn't even know the dwarves exist. How is it that you think the queen is trying to set it up that everybody's fighting each other? She has literally done nothing in this movie to make you think she's trying to get people to turn on each other.
It's essentially a family squabble.
Yeah. So anyway.
That's what she wanted us to have, a family squabble.
But that's just the thing. It's like creative choices like that.
Yeah.
That just leave you going, huh, here's another example. The people in the kingdom have not seen Snow White since she was a little girl. They even set up in the opening, what's it called when the narration, in the open narration, you know, once upon a time, you hear a narrator talking, right? The narration at the beginning even says, as the years passed, many people even forgot Snow White existed, you know, sort of thing, right?
Yeah, much like Sleeping Beauty.
So it's been years since she was a little girl, locked away in the castle.
Yeah.
Now, many years later, she's Rachel Ziegler now. And at the end of the film, or in the third act of the film, she comes walking into the kingdom. Remember, nobody's seen or heard from her. Nobody's seen her since she was a little girl. Most people forgot she existed. That's what they said in the narration. And she comes walking in to the kingdom, and everybody knows who she is. They just all instantly recognize her, and without a word, start walking behind her onto the castle. It's like,
where's the
what are you doing
clarity
here? What are we doing here?
Yeah.
You've gone out of your way to say nobody's ever seen her. There's no point in this film that she ever talks to the people. And then all of a sudden she just shows up and everybody instantly I don't recognize some of my own cousins when I don't see them for a couple of years. And it's just like, oh, so we're just supposed to accept that this happens? Okay. Another thing going into this movie was that for the first, now look, everybody knows I'm not the biggest fan of Gal Gadot.
Okay, here we go. I was going to say, we haven't mentioned Gal yet.
We haven't mentioned Gal yet. Everybody knows I'm not the biggest, I'm actually a big fan of her as a personality. Like every time I see her just doing casual stuff and conversations, I can't help but find her to be infinitely likable. I just do. Whatever her personal politics are, whatever, whenever I see her like in panels and just behind the scenes conversations, I can't help but be won over by her personality. But I've never had a high opinion of her acting ability. Going into Snow White, I remember I said on this show, you know what? I think maybe she's found her thing. Like playing the wicked stepmother, right? I thought this could kind of be the next step of evolution in the process of Gal Gadot. And I started to believe that, you know what? I think this might be a big turnaround point for her. Because I kind of liked in the little scenes that I saw, I thought this, nah, forget that. Forget it. She was not good. I mean, it was so, I'm not going to say it's like the worst performance I've ever seen, because it's not. And I do think there has been a noticeable improvement in Gal Gadot's acting over the past decade. I do. But every line with her as the wicked stepmother in this movie was so hammy and so overacted. And like just somebody, look, this is just clearly somebody who doesn't have it. I don't have it either. But she doesn't have it. She's not able to embody a character. She's not able to use subtlety or emote. Everything is just hammy, right over the top, one-dimensional. And other than me buying it when Amir tells her, you, my queen, are the fairest of them all, because she is absolutely stunning. Other than that, it didn't work. It just didn't work. So, and then let's move on to the Prince Charming. By the way, one of the things I was really surprised at was how much this movie actually sticks to the original story. Like, you know what I thought they wouldn't do in the movie? Have the scene where they need the prince to find her after falling under the spell of the poison apple and need true love's kiss to wake her up. I honestly didn't think they'd put that in there. If anything, I thought they might role reverse it and have like the Prince Charming type character be the one unconscious and she has to kiss him or whatever. But no, that was in there too. Everything about the wicked stepmother, the death sleep apple, all that. For the most part, it was pretty true to the original tale. I was kind of surprised by that. But sometimes to its detriment. There are some times when I see movies, you guys hear me talk about this all the time, that's based on certain source material. It's like, this is really where they should have deviated from the source material a little bit more. But let's talk about the Prince character for a second.
Mm-hmm.
The one major deviation they took was with the Prince Charming character, because he's not a prince. That's the one big difference, is that this guy character, the love interest, is actually like kind of a bandit that lives in the woods with a bunch of other bandits.
I had a feeling just based on his clothing, I'm like, this
Yes.
doesn't seem.
And he's still a believer in her father, the true
gotcha.
king.
Okay.
You know, as someone who's still loyal to the true king and all that kind of stuff. So other than being a prince, it was that. I don't know this guy's name. I don't remember what else he's from. And I am not suggesting this kid isn't a good actor. I'm not suggesting he's not. This is not like a Gal Gadot situation. But I did find this kid miscast. This wasn't the right role for him.
Andrew Burnap.
Is that his name?
Apparently his name is Jonathan, his character.
Yes, his name was Jonathan in it. So there you go. There's 3 of us now. Again, I'm not saying he's not a talented kid. I'm not saying he can't have a brilliant future. I'm not saying he doesn't have it. I'm just saying the whole time I watched the movie with him in it, I just constantly felt like the old Sesame Street game. One of these things does not belong here. And he felt out of place. And that leads me to the biggest problem. The movie had no heart.
Mm-hmm.
There's one moment with Dopey that got me. But other than that, and again, the terrific first 10 minutes, but other than that, it didn't have a soul. The movie just didn't have heart or a soul to it. Like, you never felt it. It never felt emotionally honest.
Mm-hmm.
It never felt like everything just played like a high school stage play. And yeah, Rachel was great in it, but she was still only reciting the lines she was given.
Someone mentioned that on Rotten Tomatoes, and they were like, I kind of felt like they had to have all the little cute animals just to make you have like pull out your heartstring, because everything else was like,
you know what? That's to be fair. The other thing I got to give it to this movie is all the forest animal stuff. Adorbs. They didn't even. And they never tried to make them photorealistic. They made them look like, which was very consistent with the Seven Dwarfs. They made them look like animated forest animals that happened to be real.
Yeah.
And kind of the same approach they took with Seven Dwarfs. And I got to say, the animals were adorable. I'll give it that. But the biggest problem with this film to me, besides all the logical fallacies and some of the performance issues and all that kind of stuff, was just the fact that it felt soulless. It felt soulless. So the funny thing is that the 2 things everybody was whining and bitching about before ever seeing the movie, to me actually ended up being the 2 best things about it. The 2 almost redeemable things about it.
Yeah.
But not enough to save it. It's not a great movie. And listen, like we said, about half the critics like it. And it's one of those situations where I get it. I get why somebody else would sit down and watch it. My wife actually really liked it. We came out, I did my out of the theater review.
Mm-hmm.
And then I said to Ann, so, what did you think about it? And she's like, after I did my out of the theater review saying, this isn't a very good movie.
Yeah.
And what did you think, honey? I actually really liked it. And she was literally on her phone texting her friends saying they should go see it. So, I mean, look, it's going to hit different people in different ways. But for me, all this movie does for me is make me more excited to see Lilo and Stitch.
Right.
Because it looks like they've done that one right. Because you feel heart and soul, even just in a 2+ minute trailer.
This
for
always
Lilo and
felt
Stitch.
like a rudderless ship, unfortunately.
Yeah.
They didn't really know where they were going with it in the first place. I don't know if it was during the Chapek era when this even began pre-production or development, but it did really feel like a rudderless ship. And then they tried to course correct based off reactions, and then whenever that happens, it's like you're chasing your own tail. And that's how this I feel like this is what happened,
Yeah. So, again, listen, much worse movies this year. It's not a total train wreck. I just think there are other things you can do with your time than see Snow White. And I was cheering for it. I was cheering for this movie. You know, Rob and I both were. We're like, I hope it's good. I hope it's enjoyable. But at the end of the day, this isn't it. Let's just look forward now to Lilo and Stitch and hope that one carries it. Anyway, guys, question is for you. Did you have a chance to see Snow White? If so, what did you think about it? Maybe it worked for you better than it did for me. Great if it did. I hope you enjoyed it. I wish I enjoyed it more. Whatever you guys think, jump down to the comment section below and let us know your thoughts. Hey guys, thanks so much for watching this video. Make sure you like the video, leave a comment, and subscribe to our channel. And don't forget, we have a daily podcast called the John Campea Show podcast, available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or your favorite podcasting app of choice. Go and subscribe to it today so it'll be there when you need it.